If you've been wanting an e-bike but crave a little extra balance and comfort, this is the one to watch. The Lectric XP Trike2 is stable, approachable, and packed with features that make every ride easy and fun. So what changes did Lectric make with this new and improved version of its electric trike? Let's take a ride and find out. Hey everyone, John here with Electric Bike Report, and today we're diving into the Lectric XP Trike2. If you've been following Lectric, you know they've built a reputation for affordable, feature-packed e-bikes like the XP4 folding e-bike, the XP 2.0 fat tire e-bike, and the Expedition 2.0 cargo bike. But this time they've taken their hugely successful electric tricycle, the XP Trike, and made some big improvements while keeping the original model's overall stability, comfort, and extremely budget-friendly price. We put the XP Trike2 through all of our standard tests to evaluate its speed, range, braking performance, and hill climbing power, and as we go through this review, I'll tell you exactly how it performs and who this trike is perfect for. Whether you're someone looking for a more stable alternative to a traditional e-bike, or you need something with a high payload capacity and room for lots of cargo, the XP Trike2 might be exactly what you're looking for. But let's start things off by taking a closer look at what makes this trike stand out. First things first, we've got to talk about price because this is still one of the most affordable electric trikes on the market. The original model really shook up the industry with its price point of around $1,500, and even with lots of upgrades and some new features, Lectric managed to keep the same price point with the XP Trike2. We've seen and tested a handful of models that are slightly less expensive, but as we'll cover today, this trike's ride quality and value are pretty much unmatched at its price. Part of that great ride quality is the XP Trike2's sturdiness and overall comfort. Lectric redesigned the frame, so it looks better, it's stiffer, and while it is also a bit heavier, it helps keep the trike stuck to the ground when you're riding. On top of that, they added a coil suspension fork with 50 millimeters of travel and a through axle, and a suspension seat post with 40 millimeters of travel, so even if things get a little bumpy, you're pretty much guaranteed not to be jostled around too much. Finally, I want to expand on the Trike2's value factor by covering some of the new or upgraded features and components that you're not likely to find on other trikes in this price range. This model has an upgraded hydraulic disc brake system from Star Union with sturdier brake levers, thicker rotors, and a nicer parking brake feature with a toggle lever. There's also a really clean looking color display with 5 color-coded assist levels. There are integrated turn signals, and there's also an incredibly quiet but still very capable 500-watt motor. But now let's talk about the components that make up the XP Trike2. I mentioned the 500-watt motor, which has a peak of 1,092 watts and 65 newton meters of torque. It's important to point out that it's mounted between the rear wheels and connected to a differential axle, which allows both rear wheels to get power and spin independently when turning. The original XP Trike made this design popular, and since then we've seen it time and time again on other similar models. Moving on though, the motor is paired with a removable 624 watt-hour battery that's mounted behind the seat tube. The trike's drivetrain is a simple but effective single-speed setup, including a 36-tooth chainring and a 16-tooth cog on the freewheel that keeps maintenance low. We'll talk more about this shortly, but the XP Trike2's motor does most of the heavy lifting, so you don't need a lot of gears to get around. The hydraulic brake system I mentioned pairs 2 piston calipers with 180mm rotors. There's one on the front wheel and then another mounted centrally on the rear axle. The wheels are 20 inches in diameter, which keeps the trike's center of gravity low, and then the tires are 2.5 inches wide, giving you plenty of grip on paved surfaces and some extra cushioning over bumps. All 3 wheels also include full coverage plastic fenders, and there are tail lights on the rear fenders, along with a central tail light mounted to the frame with turn signals and a brake light functionality. There's also a large cushy saddle with an adjustable backrest on the suspension seat post I mentioned. Up front, the trike has an integrated LED headlight and a set of 25-inch handlebars mounted to a telescoping and collapsible stem. This, along with the frame's central hinge, can help it to become more compact, so it can take up less storage space or potentially even fit in a vehicle, although we found that folding everything down is somewhat of a complicated process. For starters, the front wheel needs to come off, which is relatively easy thanks to the through axle with a quick release lever, but then the fenders also need to be removed along with the optional front basket if you have that equipped. Getting back to the cockpit though, the ergonomic rubber grips are comfortable and all the controls are easy to reach. There's a half twist throttle on the right handlebar, the Trike's button pad is on the left, the Trike also comes with a bell, and of course the color display is mounted centrally on the handlebars. We've got a few final details to cover before moving on. I want to be sure to mention that Lectric has plans to release an upgraded version of this Trike in the near future with a 750 watt motor, a larger battery, a torque sensor, and some really great looking color options. At least at the time of filming, that version is set to be priced around $1,800, so if you're interested in getting our take on it, please make sure you're subscribed and you turn on notifications. But this version of the XP Trike2 has a 415 pound total payload capacity, which includes up to 330 pounds for the rider, and then up to 105 pounds of cargo in the optional front and rear baskets. The front can hold up to 30 pounds, while the rear can carry 75. We weighed our test Trike at 91 pounds, including an 8.5 pound battery. The XP Trike2 is both UL 2271 and UL 2849 certified. It has a maximum speed of 14 miles per hour through both its throttle and pedal assist system, and it has a single frame size that comes in 3 color options. This one's called Stratus White, but there's also Tempest Gray and Glacier Blue. Anyway, that should cover all the details, so let's get into our test sections to see how it performed. Considering that the XP Trike2 has a super high payload capacity that can include heavier riders and lots of cargo, it's important to have brakes that are up to snuff. We tested the XP Trike2 by riding at its maximum speed, applying the brakes at a set line, and then measuring the distance it took to come to a complete stop. We completed this same process 3 times in a row and averaged the results for a final score of 12 feet and 6 inches. Historically, other Trikes we've tested have actually done really well here. The category average is currently 12 feet and 3 inches, so the Trike2 came out roughly average in comparison. It's worth noting that the Trikes we've tested have had a variety of different speed limits and brake types that included coaster brakes, mechanical brakes, a mixture of brake types, or different quantities of rotors and calipers. For this reason, it's pretty hard to make an apples-to-apples comparison, but we can at least take a closer look at how this version of the XP Trike did versus the previous model. That Trike stopped at an average of 13 feet and 2 inches, so there was a noticeable improvement with the Trike2, and I think that really comes down to the upgraded brake system, which more than counteracted this version's higher weight. The Trike2's Star Union hydraulic brake system features thicker rotors. These are 2.3 millimeters versus the original's 1.8 millimeter rotors, so these are better able to dissipate heat. But on top of that, this system has more robust brake levers and brake lever bodies, and its parking brakes are easier to operate and feel more durable as well. In my time on the Trike, I was seriously impressed by these brakes. There were actually times that I applied them and thought to myself that I would likely not want them to be any more powerful. Braking could be fast and slightly aggressive, which could be a little intense, but also confidence-inspiring, especially when riding with cargo. They did a really great job when I was riding down one of our test hills when loaded up with an extra 60 pounds of gear. The brakes easily controlled my speed and also stopped the Trike safely before I got to a relatively busy intersection at the bottom of the hill. So all in all, the XP Trike2 passed this test with flying colors, and it gets our approval for having safe and extremely effective brakes. Next up, let's talk about speed. I mentioned that the XP Trike2 has a maximum speed of 14 miles per hour and 5 pedal assist settings, but it also has a beginner mode with more strict speed limits. I tested the Trike on our local paved shared use paths to find the average speed of each assist level in both riding modes and to find out how quickly the throttle accelerates. Let's go take a look at how the tests went, and then we can analyze the results back here. All right, we are here for one of 2 speed tests on the XP Trike2. We're going to start off here in beginner mode, and to begin completely, I'm pedaling with no pedal assist, and that is kind of right, I'm going to say 4.5 miles per hour. I'm really not trying to move very fast, and the reason why is because if I go up here to eco mode, there's just a very light level of power in beginner mode, and it is
obviously, you know, as beginner mode, it's just designed to get you kind of used to being on a motorized tricycle. So the speed limit here is basically right around 5 miles per hour with pedal assist. And, you know, it feels very, very relaxed, very calm, very natural and approachable in this level. You know, it does feel like I'm doing most of the work, which, you know, that low level of power, that is true, but we are holding pretty steady right at the 5 mile per hour mark. So let's go ahead and go up to tour mode. This also has a 5 mile per hour limit. If this trike is like the original model, and I need to confirm this, we'll talk about it at the studio, but there were power output differences even in the lowest levels, even though they have the same you know, top speed. So I will take a look at that and report back, so that there would be potentially a noticeable difference if you are, you know, pedaling on a slight incline. But again, here we are at 5 miles per hour. So let's go up to sport mode. All right, and there's definitely a noticeable ramping up in power. Not too aggressive, nice and smooth and gradual. And then I'm kind of starting to ghost pedal here. Yeah, right around, I'd say 9 miles per hour is when that probably started. And then, you know, we're cruising very comfortably here, right around 10.5, 11 miles per hour by the bike's display. Well, by the app too. Yep, okay. And yeah, seems to be holding pretty steady right around 11, maybe a little above. So, okay, let's go up to Sport Plus. I believe the speed limit is the same here. So, well, okay, actually there's a slight downward grade here, so that may be playing into it, but I don't think so. We're holding pretty steady right around 12 miles per hour. All right, and then let's go up to turbo. Yeah, same thing. Really doesn't feel any different here. Again, there may be a difference in power output technically, but the speed limits are the same. Then, you know, we're not really getting any measurable difference. But yeah, all right, that seems like a nice beginner mode test. Let's go ahead and try it in the standard mode. All right, we are back for the standard mode speed test on the XP Trike2. So this time I'm starting off in the lowest power levels, that is eco, and we're riding pretty steadily here between 7.5 miles per hour or so. Again, a pretty light level of pedal assist. Yeah, maybe hanging pretty close to 7.5. But anyway, let's go up to tour mode. So again, I'm, you know, able to kind of contribute to moving the trike in eco, but in tour mode here, I'm starting to ghost pedal kind of again right around maybe 9.5 miles per hour. So this is really just the motor doing the work at this point. And I'm just kind of relaxing into it and letting that play out. So, but again, that makes the ride very comfortable and very easy. So, you know, you don't have to put a lot of pressure on the pedals, and I think that works very well for electric trikes. But anyway, getting up toward 11.5 miles per hour here. Yeah, in tour mode, that seems pretty good. Between 11 and 11.5. Let's go up to sport mode then. Definitely a nice gradual ramping up in power in tour mode, and then sport feels a little bit stronger, but definitely not like aggressive or anything like that. We are kind of right here already at the trike's maximum speed, so I don't really expect to see any changes going forward, but you know, if you were starting from a stop in the higher levels, the acceleration force would be a little bit different. So yeah, again, 14 miles per hour, maybe a little above here in sport. We'll go up to Sport Plus. Same thing, again, we're already at the maximum speed. So then let's finish things off in turbo. And again, same thing, which again makes sense. So, all right, let's go check out the throttle. All right, so I think I want to do something a little bit different for the throttle test, since we in the pedal test saw that Sport Plus and Turbo all had the same top speed essentially. I did kind of want to illustrate the different power levels here. So I'm going to do just 2 tests, through throttle acceleration tests in a row, one in Sport and then one in Turbo. So we'll skip Sport Plus, but just so you can see that there is a difference in acceleration. So let's go ahead and start the Sport test in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so yeah, definitely ramping up very gradually. Feels nice and relaxed. And, you know, getting up to speed relatively quickly still, but not very punchy or anything like that, not aggressive. We're up to 13 and then 13 and a half, climbing up to 14.1. Okay, so that's going to be the top speed there. Let's go ahead and slow back down, and then I'll bump things up to turbo mode here, and then we will take off again once the app here kind of resets. Okay, so let's start again in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, yeah, definitely much more force there. Still not, you know, scary fast or punchy or aggressive at all, but definitely more swift. So you can see we got up to speed very quickly there, right? And then, yeah, just with some variations in the path, maybe exceeding the 14 mile per hour limit a little bit. But in any case, yeah, I think everything looks good. Let's go ahead and bounce back to studio.
Running through the numbers one more time, I started off with very casual and light pedaling in the beginner mode test at 4.6 miles per hour. As I mentioned, the starting speed in the Eco and Tour Assist levels was right around 5 miles per hour. I recorded 5.2 and 5.1 miles per hour respectively. Sport brought me up to 11.2 miles per hour, and then I topped out at the Trike's reduced maximum speed at 12.1 miles per hour in both the Sport Plus and Turbo levels. FYI, I did reach out to our contact at Lectric, but they were out of the office, so I didn't get information about different power levels in Eco and Tour before filming, but I will update our written review when I know more. Generally though, I think beginner mode does live up to its name, with a couple of very light and slow settings to start, followed by a comfortable cruising speed in Sport, and a couple of controlled but relatively fast higher settings. The Trike was faster in all 5 assist levels in the standard mode. Eco had me riding at a relaxed 7.4 miles per hour, Tour kicked things up to 11.4, and then I reached top speed in Sport, Sport Plus, and Turbo, each with an average speed of 14.1 miles per hour. Although as you saw in the throttle test, there is a difference in power between those 3 settings, with Sport accelerating relatively slowly, Sport Plus offering a bit more juice, and Turbo feeling faster and more powerful while still being controlled. Now, as the graphs of that data show, there were really only 3 speed options in both beginner and standard modes. I think I'd have liked to see a few more gradual steps in power to give riders more control over their speeds, but between the 2 modes, I think there should generally be enough variation to suit just about anyone. I definitely liked how safe and manageable this Trike could feel. I think the beginner mode is going to be great for those who have never been on an electric Trike before, and I like that, at least by default, the throttle speed and acceleration force is tied to the pedal assist level. As I said, there are some options for how the throttle behaves, which I'll show you later in the ride quality section, so be sure to stick around. But overall, I think we can say the XP Trike2 did a very solid job in this test. Range is always a big question with electric bikes and trikes, so we performed both a high and low power range test to find the XP Trike2's minimum and maximum range. We rode the bike on our local paved trail system, starting off with a full battery in each test, and then riding until it was fully drained. So in our high power test, our team covered 30.6 miles, and in the low power test, we reached 52.3 miles. Both of these results are relatively average when compared to similar electric trikes we've tested. Those averaged 30.6 and 48.5 miles, so the XP Trike2 was spot on in turbo mode and slightly higher in its eco mode test. In relation to electric bikes and trikes, average performance is great because it means that the model we're testing is spec'd well enough to keep pace with its peers, and that's actually a big deal here considering that this model has a smaller battery than the original XP Trike. If you remember, the Trike2 has a 624 watt-hour battery, while the original came with a larger 672 watt-hour battery. We did notice a bit of a difference in the high power range tests for both models. This one went about 9 fewer miles. And while that does mean its battery capacity and range have been downgraded a bit, I think it's important to consider both the upgrades we talked about earlier and the fact that e-bike prices have risen multiple times recently due to tariffs, but this Trike's price hasn't changed. Overall, I think it's more than a fair trade, and considering that the Trike was able to reach its top speed in its middle assist levels back in our speed test, I don't think most riders will notice much of a difference unless they need the higher settings for hauling lots of weight or climbing hills regularly. Most trike riders we've interacted with tend to go on relatively short trips, whether running out for groceries or just going on a leisurely cruise, so the XP Trike 2 should be capable of multiple rides before needing to be recharged, at least for most folks. When the time comes to plug the battery in, Lectric's standard 2 amp charger should have you ready to roll again in about 6.5 hours, but you can always upgrade to the optional 5 amp charger that cuts charging down to under 3 hours. The bottom line here is that we're very satisfied with where the XP Trike 2 landed, and our test proved that Lectric's advertised range of up to 50 miles is accurate. Hill climbing power is another big consideration for most folks, so we tested the XP Trike 2's performance in our hill test at a place we called the Devil's Backbone. This hill is a big one. It's a half-mile long with an 8% average grade and a total elevation gain of just under 220 feet. Let's go see how the trike did when our test rider Justin attempted to throttle and pedal it to the top, and then I'll see you back here afterward to talk about the results.
Okay, we are out here on the Lectric XP Trike 2 500 watt, and we are doing the hill test. Now I have this set up in standard mode, not beginner mode. We're starting with throttle on turbo power. So we hit right about 14 miles per hour before this first steep section, and as we climb down to 12.9, 12.4, 12.0, 11.5. Looks like it's going to kind of bottom out right around 11.3 miles per hour on that first section. We'll see what we get back up to before we hit the next second steep section. We're at 14.5. It's going to kind of top out at 14.5 as we start to make this turn. 12 miles per hour making that turn. Felt actually fairly stable. 11.3. And through the second steep section, looks like it's going to bottom right around 11.1 miles per hour. I have to slow down to make this turn. And we'll see what it gets up to before this first lamppost. On a trike, you'd have to slow down a little bit more to make a 90-degree turn like that, or a 45-degree turn like that. But it's actually getting back up to speed fairly well. We're at 11, hit that right about 11.9, 12 miles per hour. In terms of the motor noise, very quiet. I can hear it, but I mean, I'm not hearing it. It just kind of fades into the background. It sounds very natural. So I'd say a little bit quieter than average. And so far climbing fairly well on throttle. This is a pretty long hill, fairly steep at quite a few sections. And we're kind of bottoming out just about 10 miles here. I'll let you listen to the motor now. So yeah, there's a slight wind today, so I'm not sure if you can hear it. The frequency on the motor is a little bit lower, which I always appreciate. And even as we get up to 12, 13 miles per hour, I'm still not hearing much. And so we'll see how this does compared to the previous trike and other trikes that we've tested as we finish this test right at 10.9 miles per hour. All right, we are back out on the Lectric XP Trike 2 500 watt version, doing the pedal test. Again, I'm on turbo. I'm in standard speed class 2, so this will go a little faster than the beginner speed. And as we hit this first hill, kind of pedaling right about 13.7, 14 miles per hour. Right now we're at 12.6, 12.5. Looks like it's going to kind of bottom out right about 12.1 miles per hour on that first section. As we hit the flat now, or flattish, getting right back up to that 14.2, 14.3. And now kind of 12.4, 12.3. We'll see what it ends up kind of bottoming out here. Looks like it's going to bottom out right about 12 miles, 11.9 miles per hour. So we slow down to make this turn. That is a single speed, so there's no shifting. We'll So we'll see what we get to at this first lamp post. Picking up speed back to that nicely. We're right at about 12.1 miles per hour at the lamp post. In terms of the gearing, I am definitely soft pedaling here. It's when I'm going uphill, and I just basically have to move my legs on turbo. So if you're going to want a more active feel to the pedal, you're going to want to go down from turbo, and that can be a good thing, especially if you're putting a lot of cargo in the back, or you're a heavier rider. That extra boost can actually help a little bit. But I'm cruising here about 11.7 miles per hour. Again, just soft pedaling. The engagement of the motor is very smooth, just kind of what we've come to expect from Lectric's rear hub motors. Very quiet, still. I'll let you listen now. Yeah, so I'm on 12, 13 miles per hour, and I don't know if you're going to hear that very much. So I think it'll be a pretty good result as we cross this line right at 11.4 miles per hour.
As you saw, the trike made pretty short work of our test hill, and Justin had 2 very easy trips to the top. He finished the throttle test in 2 minutes and 33 seconds with an average speed of 11.8 miles per hour, and his pedal time came in a few seconds faster at 1 minute and 29 seconds and 12.2 miles per hour. Now, if you're not already aware, the Devil's Backbone is a relatively new place for us. We had to switch our testing location from its previous spot where we tested all of the other electric trikes we've reviewed. That makes the XP Trike2 the first trike at the new place, which means that we can't compare its results with other models, at least at that location. Because of that, I took it to our secondary test location near our office, which we call Pilot Hill. We've tested quite a few bikes and trikes there, but Strava recently deleted our old segment, so again, our ability to compare trikes is limited, but we do have some data to help illustrate how this new electric trike performed. I made 4 trips up Pilot Hill, 2 without cargo in the optional rear basket, and 2 when carrying an extra 60 pounds. You can check out our written review using one of the links in the description below to see the numbers, but carrying cargo slowed the trike down by about 18 seconds when I tested its throttle, and only about 10 seconds when pedaling. In all cases, it felt steady and strong, and then when looking at the data from a similar model I tested the same way, the XP Trike2 differed by a maximum of 3 seconds in its throttle test, and a maximum of 7 seconds when pedaling, so I think it's safe to say that the performance of both trikes was pretty similar. Again, that means the XP Trike2 is spec'd well, and clearly it's powerful enough to give you the option to throttle or pedal when tackling hills. Ultimately, we measure trikes on their ability to make it to the top more than we do how fast they can get there, so the XP Trike2 definitely earned 2 thumbs up in this test. Ride quality is a measure of how a bike or trike feels to ride, and it involves a wide variety of factors such as sizing and fit, suspension, motor engagement, and many others. Let's head back out to the bike paths one more time to go over some of the basics, and then I'll see you back here to go over a few more details.
All right, we are back one last time on the XP Trike2 to talk about ride quality. So as an electric trike, we've got a pretty comfortable and relaxed upright riding position. So, it feels very similar to just kind of sitting in a chair or on a bench, that sort of thing. Very comfortable overall. And then I do want to just give Lectric some kudos because I think that this version of the trike just feels a little bit more stiff and stable and sturdy all around. So just something that stood out to me that I really appreciate. So anyway, though, the XP Trike2 here has a recommended height range of around 4'10" up to 6'2". Now, I am 5'11", which puts me kind of on the top end of the recommended height range, but where I have things set here, there's definitely room for folks taller than I. There's quite a bit of adjustability here, so there's actually like 12 inches of adjustment in saddle height, and then there's a little over 3 inches of adjustment in handlebar height with the telescoping and collapsible stem there. And then the reach is also adjustable a bit. So you've got these sort of BMX style handlebars. So if you loosen up the top of the stem, you can change the angle of those, which then determines how stretched out your arms are. So just where I have things set right now, I don't have full leg extension, even though I could. It just really with the single speed drivetrain and the fact that a lot of the time you're kind of ghost pedaling here, You don't really need the pedal efficiency, so I just opted for something a little bit more relaxed feeling here, even though there's, again, plenty of adjustability there. And then the reach feels great where I have things set here, so I've got a nice bend at the elbow. My arms are, you know, kind of down and out in front of me, but I could raise the handlebars if I wanted to a little bit, but yeah, where things are right now, I feel really good overall. And I think that, you know, part of the great feel of the ride is due to the suspension, which is an upgrade on this model. So we've got the 50mm travel fork up front, the custom spring suspension with preload adjustment and lockout. And then the Trike also comes with the suspension seat post with 40mm of travel. So yeah, just all around the ride is nice and smooth. I think the tires are doing some work, adding a little bit of extra cushion as well and keeping things nice and stable. It's stuck to the ground. So those are 20" by 2.5, and they've got just a nice, you know, smooth street tread pattern for riding on paved surfaces. But then the last thing to talk about here in this section is the 500-watt rear hub motor, which, as you've seen, is pretty capable and just nice approachable power levels. I do want to show you the motor engagement though, so I'm just going to kind of hit the brakes. We'll slow down a little bit. I'm in the highest pedal assist level now, and then I'm just going to turn the cranks so we can see how quickly the motor engages, and let's do that now. So I'd say that was probably around 3/4 of a turn of the cranks. Not the fastest, but definitely not the slowest. You know, kind of right in the middle, I would say. It definitely works. And then if you want to get off the line a little bit faster, you always have the throttle that you can rely on as well. So yeah, in any case, overall, I think Lectric knocked this one out of the park. But let's go ahead and head back to the studio, and I'll add a few additional thoughts.
As I said in the video clip, I found the XP Trike2 to be very comfortable, which I think was a combination of many things, including its overall sizing and adjustability, the suspension, and contact points like the oversized saddle with the adjustable backrest and the ergonomic grips. And I've got to say that I think the overall ride experience was made significantly better by Lectric's upgrades to the trim package. The display looks great. I really like the color-coded assist levels and the power meter. I found myself wishing that the battery readout would go down by increments of 1% instead of 10% for the sake of better accuracy and ease of planning when it comes to range, but I did more or less get used to it after a few rides. I was also a big fan of the included turn signals. I'm always in favor of more safety features, and I like that the Trike came with a chain guard, although I'd have preferred a thin gauge aluminum to a thin plastic. I already mentioned the Trike's super sturdy feel though, which I think also really gave it the sense of being well made. I think the Trike settings menu is also a nice addition with options for the riding mode, the throttle behavior, and a few other things. Let's go ahead and run through the display and settings menu, and then we can wrap up the review with a summary of everything we've covered so far. All right, walking through the display here. So to start things off, we've just got the speedometer, the pedal assist level, which again is color coded between all 5 levels. We have the battery charge percentage at the top. And then if you hit the power button, you can scroll through 3 different screens, with this being the first. The second shows your average speed, trip time, trip distance, and an odometer reading. And then the third one shows cadence, motor power, amps, and volts. But then to get into the settings menu, if you hold the plus and minus buttons, that will carry you into where you can make adjustments to things. So we've got a screen brightness setting. We've got a sleep mode that determines how long the Trike will stay on before it will go to sleep if you don't turn it off. We have units between metric and imperial. We can take a look at the trip computer and reset that if we need to. You can adjust the tire size. Bike classification is a good thing. So that basically in class 2, you have throttle and pedal assist. If you change that to class 1, that will deactivate the throttle. The rider mode is what we talked about in the speed test section. We have the beginner and standard. And then we have throttle PAS toggle. So this basically determines whether, kind of like the class setting, whether the pedal assist system is active, the throttle is active, or both are active, and both is the default here. Then we have throttle output. So this is where you determine whether or not throttle speeds are connected to your pedal assist level, which that is the default, but you can choose to get the full throttle power in all PAS levels if you prefer that. We also have the ability to choose whether the throttle will function from a complete stop or whether you need to have the trike moving before it will engage. I think I do recommend having it active from a standstill, unless you're a little bit concerned about it taking off on you, which I never encountered that, but it does help you get moving a little bit more easily. And then we have the walk mode function, which you have a couple different speeds there if you need that. You have a couple of options for how the lights behave. So either they're off until you turn them on, or they flash when the bike is on, and when you hold the plus button to turn them on, they become a solid instead of flashing. And then you can reset the odometer, but that's really about it. So let's go ahead and head over to the conclusion, and I'll share my final thoughts with you. So how did the Lectric XP Trike2 stack up in the grand scheme? In my opinion, it's easily one of the best electric trikes you can buy right now, especially in this price range. It's stable, approachable, and packed with features that you're not likely to find without spending more, but it also has enough power and range to handle real-world riding. On top of that, it's comfortable, easy to operate, and most importantly, safe, so I think it's clear that Lectric knocked this one out of the park. Looking back at our test results, the XP Trike2 gave us average to above average performance across the board. It has a variety of power levels and speeds to suit new and experienced riders. It has solid practical range and climbing power, and its brakes proved extremely effective and reliable as well. Still, this trike isn't perfect, and I think potential buyers should be aware that it's definitely on the heavy side, and the folding process requires some time and a few extra steps to make it as compact as possible. Additionally, while the battery on this version is a bit smaller than the previous model, I think it's still a fair trade for everything else that you get. I appreciated all of this model's upgrades, especially the boatload of things that really enhance the overall ride quality, from big things like the suspension and upgraded brakes, to smaller things like the display and integrated turn signals. The value here is just pretty hard to wrap my head around. I've also got to give Lectric kudos for the redesigned frame and the wider variety of color options. I think these are little things that have a big impact on both conscious and subconscious perception. Based on my experience and our test scores, I would highly recommend this trike for anyone looking to get out and enjoy life a bit more. Whether you need the stability of a trike due to age, disability, or other mobility issues, or you simply value the overall utility that an electric trike can provide, the XP Trike2 is a budget-friendly option that goes big on delivering a fantastic experience. If you'd like to take a closer look, you can check out the link to our written review in the description box below for more information about our testing. If you're interested in purchasing the XP Trike2, please consider using the affiliate link to Lectric's website down there as well, as it does help to support our channel without increasing your cost. Please let us know what you think of this trike and how you'd use it down in the comments section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. But thanks again for taking a ride with me today. I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Lectric XP Trike2.